Right, today is the fourth talk on SD 52.1, the miraculous life of Gotama Buddha. Today we begin with the new section, section 2, Seeing the Buddha. This is in fact the bulk of the chapter. And then the last chapter 3 is only one short chapter after the Buddha. So, in this chapter, we will examine the life of the Buddha, the human Buddha, if you like, from his conception. In other words, the moment of arriving in this world until just before or just after the Great Awakening. So, in other words, we are looking at the life of the Bodhisattva. Just a comment on the word Bodhisattva. This word is English, anglicized term from the Sanskrit Bodhisattva, and in Pali is Bodhisattva. There are different, what I call, derivations, origins of this word. For example, you can take, of course, Bodhi is quite clear. Bodhi means awakening. Even the word awakening is something I prefer because it's very close to the root of the word Bodhi, that is Bud. Pali words, so they have roots that gives us the kind of like the root idea behind the word. So you have sets of words that form around this root. So from Bud you get the noun Bodhi, then you get the participle Buddhi, and then you get an agent noun Buddha, and so on. So you've got the verbs also. The verb is very interesting. So from Bud you get Bujati, meaning to understand. And it is from this word, Bujati, to understand, we translate in idiomatic English as to awaken. Because if we say the Buddha is the one who understands, it doesn't sound so right. Because he understands things in a very profound way. His understanding changes him. And when he teaches the Dhamma to us, we are also changed. So it's more than just understand. It is a kind of realization that changes us. So awaken is the usual term the teachers and scholars usually use. I also stress the idea that when we're talking about the historical Buddha, it's good to stay with the word awaken, with the verb awaken and the noun awakening and so on, and leave the word enlighten to other usages. The older English translation is the enlightened one, okay? Probably because they try to associate this with the British Enlightenment and so on. So the Buddha is the awakened one. Before this period of being the awakened one, before he awakened under the Bodhi tree, we call him Bodhisattva. So here, of course, to be more exact, we can call this, we can specify this term as the historical Bodhisattva. So you got the historical Buddha, the historical Bodhisattva. Here historical means he arose in this world among humans. And then, now the question is this, can we call him Bodhisattva before that, before the conception? Of course we can. So, but he's not, we wouldn't regard it as the historical Bodhisattva anymore. We can, if we can call him the mythical Bodhisattva, if you like, in the sense that mythical in the sense of a true story, but with a deeper meaning. On the other hand, if we are talking about the historical Buddha, the historical Bodhisattva, we can of course extend the meaning to cover all aspects of Gotama. Of course, here we have a problem of identity, you see. The Buddha, Sakyamuni, Buddha Gotama, we can understand from his conception until he passed away, you have this Buddha called Gotama Buddha. And then before that, he was Setaketu in the Tusita, which we'll be talking about in a while. So is he the same person or different person? Right? And before that, you have Vesantara, according to legends. Right? So he lived life as Vesantara, and then he died, and he was reborn as Setaketu. And then the final birth. So are they the same people or are they different people? So this is where we have Indian philosophy to answer this. The answer is he is the same person and yet different. The same yet not the same. So this is a very common way in Indian philosophy of allowing two seemingly contradicting realities to exist because they reflect on different aspects of change. If we understand nature of change and accept it, then of course this way of talking is not a problem. In fact, it helps us to understand reality much better. This is nothing not difficult to understand, really. All you got to do is open up your family album or your personal photo album and look at yourself when you're very young, or maybe you're lucky enough your parents probably took a picture of you as a baby. And then if they love photography, they probably document your whole life every year. There's so many thousands of photos to look at. And then of course you're suffering because there's so many photos. Anyway, so you look at yourself when a little baby, and you look at yourself when you are, say, 5 years old, okay, and then 15 years old, 20 years old, and so on, and then now, okay. So you have this set of half a dozen photos, and you can say, that's me, okay. You got a baby, you say, that's me. This is what you would say. Maybe your son or intelligent young child will say, that's not you, it's a baby, right? So there you are. Both are correct, right? So yes, that's me as a baby, right? So, but now I'm different, right? So there you are. So we're talking about, of course, when we understand this, we're talking about this person in two different time frames, different times, okay? Number two is there is this continuity from that baby through the many, many years of life until now. There is this continuity. Right? Of course, there's a big debate about how this happens. To simplify this, we can say, I know that it's me because of my memory. Okay, so my memory goes on that way, all right? Of course, there are again problems. What if I lose my memory? But they did not trouble us. The important thing is there is this continuity, this what we can call karmic continuity. And this is what is very significant. It is this continuation of karma in our lives from day one until now, from previous life until now, from many, many lives before that until now. It connects us in a sense as one individual. But here again, we don't talk about permanent individuality. We don't have the idea of someone who's unchanging, an essential soul, and so on. So in a sense, we're also changing all the time. So there is this thing called memory that helps us remember this connection, right? So I think this is enough for us just to think about this really complex idea of a person. So the Bodhisattva is this person from the moment of conception to awakening. But we can also talk about him before that, for example, in a previous life, right? So here, there's a bit of a problem here. If you remember, there's a story about the Buddha in the past life, where he was this Brahmin student by the name of Jyotika, right? And then he has this friend.
Jyotika or Jyotipala?
Jyotipa. His name is Jyotipala. And then he has this, the name of, this is a potter, Gatikara, right? So he met the Buddha Kassapa. Now, of course, it is also one of his past lives, but if we look at the stories we have from the commentaries, you have his penultimate life, in other words, second last life, the life before the last life, before being Gotama Buddha, he is Setaketu, and before that he is said to be Vesantara. So if he is Jyotipala, then it would be sometime before that. So you have this, you got to imagine this sequence, right? Again, where the Jataka stories are concerned, we can ask ourselves the question, are they true or not? I mean, was he really Vesantara as a human being? Again, here, to be quite honest, we can only say we don't know. And it is not necessary for the story of Vesantara to be true, because the idea, if you remember probably the first talk, I think we're talking about the historical Buddha. Even if we do not know who the historical Buddha is, from his teachings we have this amazing collection of practices. As they say, you may not know who the chef is, but the test is in the eating. The test of the pudding is in the eating. When you practice it, you get this feeling of peace. You get this result of attaining awakening. So the story of Vesantara is a beautiful story in the perfection of giving, right? So whether Vesantara exists as a person or not does not matter. It is great literature, and the story is what is important to us. I mean, what's the point of saying, oh yes, he exists, and then we just forget about, dismiss him, and that's it, as if he did not exist. So that is called the intellectual approach. You just kind of say, okay, we know he exists, that's it, right? So that's not very helpful. So the idea is, what does the story teach me? How can I practice it? How can my life become better as a result? So there you are, you have this whole series as part of the, if you like, the extended life of the historical Buddha. And you can, since you have gone so far back, you can go further back. There are many other lives, going back. We can say, okay, so when does it start? You can say, all right, it starts from the time when he took the vow, or he declared that he wants to be Buddha, before Dipankara Buddha, the mini Buddhas before this, right? 24 Buddhas, I think, right? But then we have another problem here. There is a book in the Apadana which is called Pubakama Pilotika. It's a very interesting title. It means the rags of previous karma. Pilotika, pieces of rags. And this Pubakama Pilotika contains a set of very unique stories. They're not Jataka stories. They're not very happy stories. They are stories about the bad things that the Buddha in the past lives did. So the question now, do we regard this as part of the historical Buddha, historical Bodhisattva? It is connected to him. So there you are, this is where you come to this problem of technicality. Early Buddhism doesn't bother about technicality. Don't quarrel with it. You can still call him, oh yeah, that's the Bodhisattva, so he made some mistakes in the past, right? Before he took the vow, before Dipankara. For example, in one of the stories, he was a doctor, probably a money-minded doctor, and then he had this patient who had problem with the eye, and he treated this patient well, and then this patient couldn't pay him, and he got very angry, very upset, and he gave the wrong medicine, and this patient went blind. And then because of that, it is said, in the last life, when the conditions were there, he was standing in the hot sun and he has this terrible headache, so that headache came back. So, in other words, you see in the case of the Bodhisattva, some past karma, so coming back, ripening when the conditions are right, but it doesn't create new karma. So anyway, this is all this is to help us understand to what extent do we talk about the historical Buddha. So you can go as far back as the storytellers remember and can tell us some useful stories about the Buddha. But it is sufficient for us, at least in the case of this study here, SD 52.1, we go back to the time of the penultimate birth, that is the birth of the historical Bodhisattva in Tusita. So this is in chapter 2. In 2.1, the title is, or subtitle is the Bodhisattva in Tusita. And then 2.1.1 is his name, Setaketu. Setaketu, Seta means white, Shweta in Sanskrit, Ketu can mean comet, it can also mean a kind of a banner. So it's called something like white comet or white banner. So this is his name. Now the question is this, why is he reborn in Tusita? Why not Tawatingsa or Yama world, or even one of those other sense world, other sense heavens? It is quite easy to understand actually. Definitely he would not be reborn among the 4 guardian kings, because those kings are subservient, they serve Sakra in Tawatingsa. So he's going to be the Buddha, so he's not likely to be born there. And the 4 great kings, they are in a sense very human. They have wives, they have children, and they fight, they defend Sakra and the heavens. And they belong to what's called the earthbound heaven. Like Tusita, it's also earthbound heaven. These 2 are earthbound. In other words, they are very close to the earth. Whereas the other heavens, Yama, upwards, they are heaven-bound. They are not earthbound. In other words, they are more distant from the earth. So this is another interesting fact which the commentators tell us. So this the Bodhisattva will not be born among the 4 guardian kings who have servants like yakshas and gandharvas, kumbhantas, and so on. So after that is Tawatingsa. Why is he not born in Tawatingsa, Sakra's heaven? Tawatingsa, remember, is also one of the earthbound heavens. And these earthbound gods, Sakra and company, they're very much like humans. You can say they're very much like the Greek gods. The Greek gods in Mount Olympus. And here you have Sakra, his 33 friends, and other beings in heaven of the 33. Very close to the earth. In fact, Sakra often comes down to earth, and he has to protect his position of deity. Anytime apparently it seems he can lose his seat, so to speak. It's almost like a kind of MP. He will lose his seat if it's not up to the mark. What does it mean, up to the mark? I mean, you have someone on earth, he's practicing this really very difficult practice of keeping the precepts and meditation and so on, and doing good works especially. especially acts of truth, and this threatens Sakra's position. The story goes that whenever someone on earth does something really good, Sakra's throne hits up. It really hits up. He's going to be very uncomfortable. Say, oh, yes, somebody is trying to take over my place. And then he will use his vision and see, who is this person trying to challenge me? And he will send down someone, one of his servants, to take the form of a very beautiful woman usually, and try to seduce this holy man. And often he succeeds. So it's like this is quite a politics in high heavens, if you like. He's not keen on anyone on earth taking over his place. So you have this is the character of Sakra, right? He's this god, it's almost human, very much like Apollo among the Greek gods. And the good thing is he was converted by the Buddha along with Brahma. And for that reason, the modern Hindus don't worship him. That's another interesting point. So he became a stream winner. So the thing here, I'm not so sure. Probably before he was a stream winner, he was fighting the Asuras and so on. And that's another long story, which is quite well known anyway. So he became a stream winner. That means he's kind of serious in his practice. He has faith in the three jewels and so on. But he still enjoys heavenly pleasures without breaking the precepts, that is. So this Tawatingsa is not a likely place for the Bodhisattva to be born, because it's a place where there is almost earthly pleasure being experienced by the devas there, and they're fighting with these asuras and so on, and they are two of the earthbound heavens. And then you have, so Tusita is the most suitable place because it's not too high up. Too high up like Yama world and the heaven of the gods who delight in creation, Nimanarati Devas, and then the gods who lord over the creation, over the Spara Nimitta Vasavati. Those are very powerful gods. And they normally they are in some kind of meditation, or they're happy, but nothing much happens there. By earth standards, it's quite a boring place. But they are living in this kind of joyful meditative state. So again, they're kind of out of reach of earth, so to speak. Okay, so Tusita is in between all these heavens, above the earthbound heavens and below those far, far away heavens. It is said to be the most beautiful of the heavens and the most joyful, of course. And in fact, tradition goes that the future Buddhas are always born there. So right now, even as we are speaking, we can say, according to tradition, the future Buddha, Maitreya, or Maitreya in Sanskrit, is there now. So that is Tusita, the heaven of the contented gods. So when we look at the nature of the Bodhisattva, where he's born in his second last birth, we begin to see him coming closer to the human world, getting himself ready to be born here, as if announcing to us, here is this special being, a deva who's coming here. But we have to be very careful here not to misinterpret this story to say that, oh, he was a god, and as a god he became human. It's not like that. Because in the Buddhist stories of karma, these things happen again and again. It's no big deal to become a god. However, if we look at the overall development of Buddhism, for example, after the historical Buddha, after the time of our Buddha, people who could not accept the death of the Buddha begin to see him as an immortal being. So in a sense, the idea of the Buddha as a god from small g to big G started with this idea of the Bodhisattva being born in Tusita. That these thinkers and writers, they say, well, look, he was a god before, and so on. That is a later idea, it's a wrong view, so we should not be concerned too much with that. Another interesting point we should note is that the life of the Bodhisattva in Tusita is not commentarial. It is found in the suttas also. His life in Tusita is mentioned, for example, in the Acharya Buddha Sutta, Majjhima 123. This means that the story is very old, canonical. Of course, when we say, oh, canonical, what do we mean by this? It did not necessarily have a reason during the Buddha's lifetime, but definitely within living memory, if you like. The stories could have been compiled soon after he passed away. But we do have a cut-off period, it's Asoka's time, around 200 BC, okay? BCE, before the Common Era. So in that sense, we have this, we say it's canonical, right? So once again, we're dealing with the miraculous life of the Buddha. So we should remind ourselves one more time that these are stories. We love stories, and stories are told for a good reason, to educate us, to bring out the goodness in us. Like many good stories we hear as children, fairy tales and so on, we love hearing them. We love knowing that the good people will triumph in the end. We want to see justice done and so on. Many of these stories are not true in the historical sense, but they're real enough. The events that these stories relate to us are real enough. They will happen to us again and again. So these stories preserve an iconic view, a kind of tableau, if you like, an episode of something that happens, something important that will happen to us sooner or later, again and again, in a lifetime. So they are real in that sense. So these stories give us this very graphic idea, so that when this situation does arise in us, this challenging situation does arise in us, we understand, we say, oh, okay, now it's my turn, and this is what I should do. So we begin to understand, we know the situation better, and we are more prepared to respond. We may not respond correctly, our estimation could be wrong, but then after the event, after the fact, we look back, we say, oh, okay, this is the mistake I made. So you have a better understanding of what went wrong, why you went wrong, and why you're suffering. So this kind of stories help us to see this bigger picture and make less mistakes as we go through life. So these are the values, the stories of the Buddha's past lives and the life of the Buddha also. So when we come to the story of the life of the Buddha, we look at it as an inspiration to put in effort to practice, not to give up, to go on doing it so that we reach the goal in this life itself. So that's the meaning of myth, that's the meaning of Buddhist legend, and above all, that's the meaning of the story of the historical Buddha. So do reflect on this, that the Dhamma comes first. All right, with that we end today's study. Let's close with a short reflection. The life of the Buddha is for us to reflect on, for us to emulate. There are stories that reenact the Dhamma. So in many ways, when we reflect on the life of the Buddha, we are telling ourselves these are teachings that apply to real humans, to us, and they deal with real situations in our lives. Reflecting in this way is very good karma. By the power of such karma, and the various good that we have done, may we be blessed with good health, with strength, and with a clear mind, wisdom, and above all the courage to aspire at least to attain stream winning in this life itself. And by all this goodness of the three jewels too, may our family and loved ones to be well and happy. May those who are practicing the Dhamma to attain the path in this life itself. And may those who are lost or having difficulty, may they to see the true Dhamma, and may their hearts warm up and return to the true path of the Buddha. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.